Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer on jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. I am so thrilled today because Mike Lewis, the man on my right, he is my guest today. He's one of the rising stars in the podcast world, and for good reason. He has been given incredible interviews on his YouTube channel, and in over 5 months, he's already gotten a lot of challenge fan favorites that rarely talk, including Abram Boyce, Cara Maria Sorbello, Kenny Santucci, and so much more. So please help me welcome the host of the Mike Lewis Podcast, Mike Lewis.
Thank you for that intro, Jacob. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, and I appreciate the invite. I always said to myself, that one day, if I were to ever be in a position to where someone would want to interview me or have me on their podcast, I would always accept no matter where I'd be in my life, but I didn't expect it to come this soon, and I'm not going to lie, it feels kind of nice being on the opposite end of the chair for once, so thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome, Mike. And the reason why I want to have Mike on this podcast is because over the past 5 months, I followed him, and he has grown leaps and bounds. And already, the challenge community has really embraced him. And in all honesty, he's one podcast you got to watch besides Hedrick Files, besides my friend Drew Angelman of Angel Cake Entertainment, and also Scott, and more importantly, we're going to predict this, you're also going to be on this, you have potential to be Challenge Mania potential level.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the praise.
You're so welcome. So when did you get interested in podcasting, and how did that lead you to have a desire to start up your own podcast?
Wow, this is kind of something that I wanted to talk about for a while. I didn't know when or how I was going to explain the story of how this whole thing came about. It's kind of crazy, actually. So this is actually the first time I'm telling the story. So I'm going to take it back a ways. So for those who maybe follow me on social media or have gazed through my Instagram, they'll notice that in my bio I have Hollister. That's kind of the company that the clothing brand that I was kind of taking pictures for and doing a little bit of work for it. And that was kind of always like my thing of what I was trying to do. I was trying to be like see where that would take me. But then I'm obviously in school, like I've mentioned on a number of episodes. So once like semesters start up, that was kind of put on hold. I would take like leaves of absences and stuff during semesters. And so this was probably around March time. I was doing what pretty much any college student would do, go to school, socialize, all that fun stuff. And it was my birthday coming up. It was probably the last week, I want to say, of the semester until spring break started. And my birthday was actually the first day of spring break. So my birthday comes, and I have a cameo first thing when I wake up in the morning from Brad Fiorenza.
Oh, wow.
From the challenge, because my one good friend, his name is Robert Kimmelman. I'll give a shout out to him because in the beginning of this, he was actually helping me with this whole stuff, and he was kind of a driving force in getting me to kind of do this thing. So shout out to him. He kind of interacts with Brad a little bit on social media because obviously for people who know that Brad is a DJ, and he was commenting a bit on my friend's music. So then they kind of were talking back and forth. So then I got a cameo from Brad. And then for my birthday, I was going to New York, and I was going to New York for my birthday with my friend Rob, who I just mentioned, and then we had decided that we were going to do a vlog, which is obviously a video log, kind of showing what you're doing and stuff. And then we had posted something on Instagram that Brad commented on, and it was funny. He was like, "Take it easy on New York tonight," which I found funny. So then I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And like then from that point on, I was just sitting in an Uber at 2 a.m. in New York, coming back home, thinking to myself, I want to do something, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I wanted to take on the YouTube thing, but where I'm from, like in my little bubble and world, everybody says, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go on YouTube. I'm going to make YouTube videos. I'm going to get 1,000 subscribers. Like, that's pretty much what everybody says. But to get from point A, you have to start at to get to point B, you have to start at 1A, my bad. Which is obviously like a daunting task because it takes a lot of mental fortitude and drive to want to, or to get to that point. You know, it's not something that happens overnight. So that being said, it was spring break starting up, and I went down to where my grandparents live, which is in South Jersey, and I was with them. I was just, vlogging and stuff down there, starting everything up in the development stages of my channel that I just started. And I was like, what could I do? I was thinking of, from obviously YouTubers, they do like crazy stuff. They do challenges, not the MTV challenges, but you know what I mean, like challenges. Like they'll do like funny videos and stuff, and vlog and do like social experiments. I was like, well, that's been done before. So I was like, well, why not just start like a whole me channel where I could vlog, do challenges like that, and just here and there do like podcasts, but not really have it be like a main thing. So then obviously, which is crazy to think, is 2 days after my birthday is when the whole pandemic got announced. So then everything went out the window from there. So then I'm like, what am I going to do? So then pretty much just being in the house for about maybe a month per se, I decided that I was going to try the whole podcasting thing. And my friend, who's actually used to play running back for the New York Giants, and he's a former Heisman Trophy finalist who I used to train with him back when I was playing football and stuff. And we kept casual contact. But then when I decided I was going to start the podcast up, I was like, well, I need a guest first.
Yeah.
And then so I called him up and I was like, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? And then he said, yeah, sure. So we did that. And then I was like, well, where am I going to go from here? So then that's when I've obviously been a big fan of the challenge for a while, as anybody who's listening to me can probably imagine. So I was like, well, challenge podcast is kind of hard to do. I know that just from gazing through social media and from what I hear, like there's plenty of them. So I was like, I could maybe just do it here and there and see what happens. So my first challenge one ended up being Trey from Real World St. Thomas. And I give a big shout out to Trey for coming on because at that point in time, I had really nothing to show for. So pretty much majority of the guests that came on in my early stages, I just give a big thank you to them. Because it's not easy. Like, they don't have to say yes to you, They could just see you as any other random person and just go on with their day. So pretty much when I had Trey on, and then from there I was like, well, I could just really do this and just see where it goes. I had Thomas Buell as my next guest, who obviously later joined me in an episode recap a few months ago as well. He said something, I think, in my podcast that kind of coincided with one of the episodes during this past season of Total Madness with the whole Corey and Jenna thing. And then next thing you know, I just opened Twitter and I see that some of the fan pages were screen grabbing it and stuff. And then from there, people were just starting to look at my stuff. So then I was like, well, I guess I caught lightning in a bottle on that one. I figured, I was like, I got lucky. But then, like, I just started ripping off names and getting them on the show. And then I was like, I could really do this. Like, this is really happening right now. And it was never for the thing of trying to get noticed or anything. Like, that's obviously cool and stuff. But a lot of it had to do with, like, the experience and, like, the lasting impacts and bonds you and the relationships you make after the fact. Like, I've established and formed friendships with, like, I'd probably say 70%, 75% of the people I've had on, and that's awesome. Like, and I think that that's the special thing about it, too, is seeing something that you don't expect to take off the ground actually take off and snowball into something that you never really anticipated. And to me, that's just really cool. And I words can't even put into it right now. And I know I've got ways to go, but it's just crazy how that kind of all started. So that's pretty much like the brief rundown of my story. Sorry if I rambled a little bit, but it's the first time telling it.
I am so happy that the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast is the first place that you told this to anybody. So thank you so much for that. And this is the reason why I wanted to have you on, is because of that growth. It's snowballed in a way I've never seen a reality television podcast, and there's millions of them that are on there dedicated, one for Survivor, one for Big Brother. But the thing is with me and with my experience is I'd rather do my favorite shows and take the best from all of them. And so that's the reason. So I applaud you for sticking to one show in general.
Yeah, and it wasn't always like my plan to, like, I never said, oh, this is just going to be a challenge podcast. I obviously, as you could probably tell from some of the interviews I've had other people, like I've had past America's Got Talent winner, obviously, as I mentioned, Giants running back. Even during like that little stretch of challenge, I've had the dad from Drake and Josh on as well, which was one of my favorites, and that was cool. Like, I'm still very much open to the idea of getting actors and stuff on here, but seeing where things have kind of gone, I'd say that it'd be in my better interest to keep doing what I'm doing.
Totally get it. I know normally what I do is I format an interview, but however, I want to talk to you about these guests because you have been really lucky with these guests, and these are major people in the challenge community that you've welcomed. So I would like to talk to you about 6 of them, and then I want to love to hear about your thoughts about your conversations. So I listened to some of my favorite conversations. I've narrowed down to 6. So I got to start because I think you got a lot of noise. You made a lot of noise when Abram Boyes came on.
Yeah, Abram was somebody that was at the top of my wish list when I started this. If you were to tell me on the spot 6 months ago, Mike, make a list of 6 people that you want to have on your podcast and why, I wouldn't be able to tell you a why on the spot, but I would be able to tell you that Abram was definitely in the top 5 for sure. And having him on, and obviously his name being such a household name and the lasting impact that he's had for the show, he's one of the greatest characters to ever come into the franchise. And getting to chat with him for albeit a little less than an hour was not only an awesome experience and creating waves to really show people like that I was here, like I was legit, and that kind of got my name like respected in a way. It was just the sheer experience of getting to talk to someone that I watched on TV. And if you watched the interview, you'll notice that I said I was in 3rd grade watching Cutthroat.
Wow.
And that was one of his best seasons, yeah. So getting to do that was just crazy to me. So that was my pretty much take on Abrams. I was in awe just getting ready for that. Yeah.
All right, another big name that you talked to, and is probably one of the biggest female names in the show history, is Cara Maria Sobello. And I got to say, I applaud you with that interview. You really it was so good to see her spirit and her positivity aura, because we've all saw what's been going on with Cara on the show for the past couple of seasons, but to see her in such a good place.
And no, yeah, definitely. And I think that's what it's all about with my podcast and just people in general. We see a side of somebody that's maybe not their best side play out on TV. And we all know that in life, we don't know what goes on in people's lives or what's going on in their head. So to formulate opinions on someone based off what you're seeing on TV or just maybe, I don't know, whatever the case may be, it's always oftentimes inaccurate. And this is basically a case in point. Cara Maria was one of the nicest, sweetest people that I ever got to speak to, off camera and on camera. And she's getting a bad rep maybe the last couple of years from...
Totally, I agree with you on that.
Whether it be her relationship with Paulie, whether it be maybe her evolution on the show. And I'm not going to lie, I wasn't the biggest fan of her last couple seasons, but that pretty much all changed getting to speak to her because obviously, as you tell, you're getting a totally different thing on TV that may not actually be the case in real life. And if she's happy with Paulie, and that's pretty much my stance with everything. If someone's happy, if they're not directly affecting you, then you should let them be happy. And I think that she's great for the show and that she needs to be brought back.
I totally agree on that. I definitely think Cara Maria needs to be brought back. I also think that Paulie needs to be brought back. And I got to say this. I defend them on Instagram because I've seen that Paulie and Cara Maria have several of the fan bases that are currently active of this season. Both Paulie and Cara Maria have done a lot for the Challenge fan base through their cameos, through Paulie's fitness program. I gotta say that I know that a lot of people, they get a bad rap, but these two people have really stepped up for the fans and for podcasts, because I've had Paulie on back-to-back years, and both of them are really incredible people. So I really hope that we do get Cara Maria back for future seasons, because she and Johnny, there's a reason why she and Johnny Bananas are the two people that CBS All Access assigned to represent a challenge.
Definitely. And when CBS was starting that thing, just the fact alone that they're putting Cara's face on it just goes to show you what is the show without her, in the sense of when they're developing that picture to put on the CBS All Access thing, they couldn't find any other girl to grab and throw on there. So it's like, if that's not enough evidence right there of what she means to the show and her body of work, then I don't know what is.
Awesome. We got to talk about Frank Sweeney, because he's one of the biggest names in the past, who's like a legend of this game, and who's also been like, fans have like slowly grown. Like, he may have left fans a better taste in their mouth during the challenge, but however, it was so interesting hearing about what happened with his relationship with Zach. But not only that, when he came on our podcast, he also pinpointed when his relationship with challenge production, deteriorated. So what were some of the feedback you heard from your Frank interview?
Yeah, I really heard what Frank had to say, in the sense of how his relationship kind of deteriorated with production. And we've seen oftentimes, as of late, production be under scrutiny, whether it be from past cast members or fans, for maybe the way of them casting, and maybe kind of blackballing the LGBTQ cast members in a way. I don't know if that's intentional, but I thought it was interesting to hear Frank say that they weren't ready to see an LGBTQ male cast member solo winner of Free Agents or become the next star. And that, to me, kind of struck deeper than a game. That's like culture. That's world, you know?
I agree. And we've had Richard Hatch win Big Survivor. We had Andy Herron win Big Brother. The challenge would probably be, if Frank won, a challenge would have gotten so much attention, and make sure that they would even get partnerships with GLAAD even.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that Frank was one of those rare gems that come into the challenge where they're like, you just know that they're right for the show. Now, obviously, me being younger, watching him on the show, I'll have a different perspective on him. But obviously, growing now, being in the place of my life where I am now, it's where I can go back and rewatch the shows. I see why he has the lasting impact that he does. And I feel as though if it's up to him, it's up to production, that he's another name that would be awesome for the show. And I'd love to see him back.
I totally agree. And we got to talk to you about one of the most interesting members of the challenge community who's been really coming back strong after being absent for all these years, and that is Kenny, Mr. Beautiful Santucci.
Yeah, Kenny's he's an interesting one. If you saw my podcast with him, you'll see that the school I'm going to now is actually the one that he went to when he graduated. So that in of itself was crazy. And another story which was funny about this whole thing was Kenny's obviously like a really big CrossFitter. He owns his own CrossFitting business. And I'm not too far from where New York is, where he's holding these workouts, right? So a few weeks, I'd say probably end of February, before the whole obviously pandemic started. I was always in Manhattan, hanging out and stuff. So I would be walking past the gym where he was holding all his workouts and stuff. So it was crazy to see on his Instagram stories and stuff, after having him on, like holding all these workouts, and to think that I was like inches away from where all that was going down. It's crazy. And I enjoyed speaking to him, and obviously he's going to be a polarizing figure. So but that's the beauty and art, I feel as though, of podcasting, is to hear perspectives on the show and talk strictly about the show and see what maybe went on behind the scenes. Like, for instance, from the island, all those stories about them going and sneaking food and stuff. Like, these are stories.
Oh yes, misadventures. Like Abram as a ninja. I remember that you were talking about Abram with the ninja, and I was like, wow. And then not to mention his misadventures with Johnny trying to get food.
Yeah, so these are all stories that without podcasting we'll never hear about, and they'll just basically be unheard of, I guess. And I think that that's cool to get them to come on here and talk about those stories and have it be shared with the audience, because the audience is the ones that really need to hear, because they're the ones always watching the show and they're the ones following it. So I think it's cool.
Alrighty, we got to talk to you about your interview with Landon Lewitt, because Landon is someone that has transitioned from reality TV to the private sector and private life. And this was for your 50th episode, so I commend you for getting Landon. And it was amazing to hear about him talking about transitioning from the challenge world to real life. And so when you were on with him, so what was some of your highlights from your conversation with Landon?
I think the highlight was getting him on here, man. When I was growing up, Landon was basically someone who I idolized. Another case of watching the show being in like third grade, I think it was, because I used to do 2 challenges a year, I think. So if I'm not mistaken, it was Fresh Meat 2 was in the first part of 2010, and I think Cutthroat was the second half of 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So I was watching that final on Fresh Meat 2 of him and Carly, and I was pacing back and forth in my living room watching that final, just like cheering on Landon. So, man, it's hard to come by these days, so I had to save him for 50. So the highlight was probably just getting to speak to him. I think more or less getting him on there and just seeing him across from you on a screen, because that was the first time we've seen Landon talk about the show visually for the first time in 10 years. I know he's talked about it like audio-wise, but seeing him on a screen 10 years after Fresh Meat 2 was a sight to see. And yeah, I was just kind of starstruck, I'm not going to lie.
And I've been watching, like hearing Scott and Derek talk about Landon on Challenge Mania, and Drew Angelman do his video on Landon. I'm like thinking, to see him now, to be really great overseas, someone like CT. Oh my God, I would love to see him tackle Hunter. I would love to see him tackle Paulie. I would love to see him how he would go toe to toe with Turbo and Tony Time.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But the only thing now is, from obviously hearing what he had to say, I don't know how keen he is on coming back. And there obviously is a certain demographic that they're targeting now with casting, whereas I feel as though Landon's obviously 40 years old, 41. He's maybe not, I mean, for hardcore fans, they'll obviously love it, but the way they're kind of gearing towards casting people that are kind of more towards like the youth, I'd say, and like pulling people who are more popular on Instagram, or how many Instagram followers you have and stuff like that, and I've talked about this a number of times, Real World Road Rules was always what it was, and obviously, I mean, they got to do what they got to do. But, man, it'd be cool to see them start pulling from Real Worlders again, like the past Real Worlds. That's pretty much like, that's probably a dream of mine. that's what made the show what it was, and it'd be cool to see them pull from it again. But on the whole Landon front, seeing him come back and go toe to toe with the people you just said would be a sight to see. Will we see it? Remains to be seen, but
all I gotta say, the ball is in Mark Long's court, and then we want to OG. So, what was your reaction when you saw that movement, and then when the news broke that Mark Long and then MTV cut the deal for We Want OGs?
Wow. So I think that, and a lot of the times, and I talk about this a lot, is oftentimes people want to pursue things and they have a vision of what they want. And a lot of the times people are often told, you can't do this, you'll never get this done, it's unachievable. And to see Mark, albeit obviously he's got a history in the show and a following and whatnot, but still, to see Mark go after what he wants and to just go and take it and make and create such waves that he did, it's an admirable thing. Like, I admire him for doing that. It's a cool thing for the fans. It's a cool thing for the people who've wanted to come back for years but haven't been able to. And it's an all-around great thing for the challenge. I think that if they want to have that be kind of another option or an alternative to the challenge, that's awesome. Maybe some people aren't fans of the current product of the show and they want to go and check out the OGs thing. So that way, there you go. You have two things now that you could watch, and you get to see people that you haven't seen in a while, and it's more of a spectacle, more or less, you know?
And I gotta say, some of the people that were on that are in consideration for We Want OGs, you brought them on the show, my friend, on your show. So I highly recommend that if and when it gets produced, and if the people that we've been thinking about are on there, they should check out your podcast first before they watch the show.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, before any of this happened, is me and Tori Hall talked about it. Me and Cyrus talked about it. I actually was the one that said, what are your thoughts if there were to be an old school challenge? And we talked about this. Not to say that Mark saw it or anything, but I think that, it's pretty funny or ironic to see that I was talking about it like before it ended up actually picking up steam.
Awesome. So besides Cara, you only have one current member of the new generation, Maddie Brooks, and I really loved your conversation with her and to talk about her journey from Party Down South to Floribama Shore to the challenge.
Yeah, it was cool getting Maddie on here, and it was obviously a tremendous honor to do so. Obviously, for what you said, being a current cast member, I would have never pictured having the opportunity to get her. Little known fact is actually I had a couple close calls before her with current cast members that didn't quite come to fruition. With Ashley and Anissa, we were close to making it happen, ultimately didn't, but to get Maddie on was awesome, and I liked her style, and I would like to see her come back. I think that she's a very well-spoken and authentic cast member. A lot of times we see people maybe change who they are for the camera, and I think what we see for Maddie is exactly who she is.
Absolutely. And I want to talk to you about your dream guests, because you also said Ashley and Anissa. That would be really cool conversations. Is there anybody else from the challenge that you would like to talk to them? Or also, have you thought about other reality shows?
Wow. So as far as dream guests go, as you guys could probably imagine from listening to my stuff, at least in the beginning, I oftentimes went for the people that are lesser heard from. So honestly, thinking outside the box here a little bit for people that maybe aren't so much on the radar, people that I'd like to get on would be like Danny from Real World Austin, although maybe he didn't have like a great challenge record or resume. That's someone who people have been requesting to hear from, because he's someone who's never been heard from, never been on a podcast. Dunbar, another one who I actually did come close to having plans with as well, another close call that You see, like, this is the first time me talking about this stuff, Jake, so I'm giving you the full sample size here. Laurel and John A. would be cool. They're two other names who haven't been on podcasts. That'd be cool to
I
have.
would love to see Laurel on your podcast.
Yeah. Well, not to give any spoilers or anything, but we'll leave it at that. I won't say what I'm alluding to, but maybe me and you can have a chat when this is over. Yeah, that'd be a good one. I know you had Joss. Joss was somebody that I love to chat with.
And I really believe, and Joss was a phenomenal guest. And I can tell you this, I love talking to him and also hearing about from his perspective, especially about like having him talk to you about like on how he severely underestimated Sylvia during Final Reckoning, and also what happened about like how he received death threats from like for his treatment of Georgia and Theo, which is just sad. It's just a reality television show, guys.
Yeah, it's not that deep, you know. And like I said before, it's easy to see what you can see on TV and then formulate opinions and stuff. And having myself actually gone through, not like obviously to that extent, but I've had my occasional messages and hate and whatnot. And it's never a good thing from experience, but
I totally agree. I've gone through that as well.
It's not the best time. No.
I totally agree. Anyway, so while I have you here, we got to talk about Challenge 36, right? And there's been lots of speculations going on. Reddit's been out of control. Instagram's been popping up with all these, with the cast members and all these surprise eliminations and all these different people that are on there. So what are your thoughts on this cast? And then who is missing in your opinion?
So who would I like to see on it?
Yes.
They're not? Okay. So, as far as cast goes, from the top, I mean, you got to mention Darrell and Teresa, right? Me and
Absolutely. This is the first time in years for both of them.
And I actually have a story about Teresa, too, that kind of ties into this whole thing. So, wait, we're allowed to talk spoilers here, right? I don't want you to get in trouble.
Of course we can talk spoilers here. I'm going to say, unfortunately, I don't have Rob Cesternino's warning spoiler song. But I'm going to say, guys, this is spoiler territory.
Yeah, so when I did my episode with Cara Maria, it was 6 days before the spoilers of Teresa and Darrell getting obviously confirmed. And it was crazy because when we're talking about who we wanted to see back, she said Darrell, I said Teresa, then everybody's telling me on Twitter that we manifested it. And I actually had no clue. But story time, another story. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, but I know now. So back in early June, I had set plans with Teresa to do a podcast. And then she had given me kind of a timetable of like when we were going to make it happen. She was like, all right, so I'm doing this, but we could set for this date, right? So I think it was around, she told me that beginning of June. So then that date comes and we get to, I'd say, end of June, right around the time that the availability calls started going out. Now, this in my head didn't really correlate because I just really didn't think much of it. It was just availability calls and stuff. So then Teresa had then told me some things are in transition right now, and I think waiting a little later might be better with a winky emoji. And I didn't know what it meant because obviously, as we know, she hasn't been on the show in quite some time. And then months later, seeing it come out, and I never really was I was trying to figure out what she meant, and then seeing now, obviously, I know what she meant. So there's that. Darrell is obviously awesome to come back. Another guy that I've been wanting to come back from quite some time. As far as that, I mean, they're casting with obviously the America's Got Talent guy Joseph. They brought a WWE person in, and I used to be a big fan of WWE. Now I'm a casual viewer. So even I could kind of see that it's definitely a little outside the box for sure.
And I gotta say, Lolo Jones, gotta see her from Big Brother, Celebrity Big Brother US, and not to mention an Olympian. I'm like, how the heck is this gonna work?
Yeah, I don't know anybody who can really go toe to toe with her.
Maybe like I wish the Laurel car. I wish they brought it. Like for me, I'm missing. I know this is gonna be a controversial answer, but I miss Pauline Cara Maria. I miss Hunter. I miss Tony Time. I need my Veronica back. I need just like I need. I would love to. I would love to see Turbo there, and then of course Derek Kaczynski. Give us because Derek has been this big cheer. I think the common for everybody, not just bridge the gap between old school and new school, but also the podcast as well. And besides, Scott can do the podcast by himself for a little bit.
Yeah, we could give Derek his shot again, and I think it's only fair. He came in second on 30-30, went to what felt like hell and back with Joss on Vendettas. So,
and not to mention, see him and Wes duke it out for old time's sake.
For old time's sake, one last time.
One last wrestling match. One last pole wrestle.
Though now, I mean, judging for what I'm reading, I think Derek would kind of be a shoo and win it now.
Oh yeah, and then I gotta say, I'm missing Joss, I'm missing Bear, I'm missing Georgia, and of course Theo Campbell, especially after Theo's eye surgery and everything. I think Theo's has been badly missed. I gotta say, I'm happy to see Cameron and Leroy back together. I'm happy Jay got his shot again. I think Brad is I really want to see what would happen if Brad and Tori were there. That would be either Rob or Amber or basically CT and DM their first time after their first breakup.
And no, yeah, and we were actually almost close to getting Tori and Brad on Final Reckoning as a pair.
That would have been insane.
I don't know how they would have made it work, but yeah, it would have made it work for me seeing it.
It would have been, and besides, it'd been nice to see their kids see them that mom and dad can actually work together.
Yeah, or they could see mom and dad arguing on TV, whichever or. But
alrighty, we just wish the best for both of them.
Right.
All right, so I want to talk before we close out the interview. I've got to talk to you about your preparation style because we haven't talked to you about that. So, how long does it take you to prepare for a podcast?
Believe it or not, once the guest is locked in, it doesn't take me a whole lot. And this is the reason I'm saying, because my style, and I've obviously evolved incredibly as the months went on. I was, in the beginning of this, much so, obviously not with the expectation that it was going anywhere, just kind of laid back. Like, my shot was off. I'd be so far back. I would kind of be not really conversing. I would just kind of fly through questions and stuff, which, I mean, I still did good for what it was worth, but I think you could see with each passing interview. And another thing is, like, the word interview, because although it is an interview, I kind of pride myself on trying to make it more of a conversation. You get what I mean? Like, that's kind of my style, because oftentimes where maybe it's an interview on like a red carpet or a media website, it's more of just like they ask you rapid fire questions and then you go on with your day. For me, it's like I want people to watch my videos and then feel like they're sitting in the room with me while they're doing it, because I much so am a fan through and through, but I know what fans are thinking, and I know what, from obviously being years of being in the community, I know what they want to hear about, what they want to see, and I know how to, I feel, engage with them on another level. So that's why preparation-wise, I'm more so, it doesn't take me too long to come up with the questions, because I'm very much always a quick thinker. So in my mind already, I know what I want to say. It's just how I'm going to deliver it, right? So I think for me, it's just connecting on a personal level with my guests to make it feel like we're talking like friend to friend, and then to also make the audience see that and I think that's just cool, man. It's cool to have a lasting impact on people, and it's cool that my style can maybe translate with a number of people to where it's a real friendly environment.
I totally agree. That's how I do with my style as well. So good on you for that. This is my third to last question. What are some of your favorite social media platforms?
Wow. So if you would have asked me this question maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even a year ago, Twitter would have not been there. But seeing as how times kind of changed, Twitter obviously now is pretty much where a majority of my following is coming from, or me following what's going on. Obviously YouTube, if we're counting that, because it's obviously a big thing. Facebook, I'm on a decent amount as well. And Instagram and Snapchat were always kind of my thing during like my youth years. And now in the last few months, that's kind of been pushed on the back burner a little bit. Like, so yeah, I definitely feel like Twitter is my pretty much go-to social media platform for the challenge. And obviously Reddit as well, I look at a lot too.
Awesome. Now, why should my audience check out the Mike Lewis podcast?
Well, like a self-promotion here. So anybody who's watching this, why you should check me out. If you're a fan of the challenge, I'm an alternative to maybe anything else you've either seen on TV or listened to from other people. And I'm one of you guys. You're a fan. I'm the same thing. We're all fans here. So I think that you, in a way, could resonate with me and relate to me in the sense of it might not be you asking the questions or talking to the person, but I'm very much the same person as you. So I think that it's really cool to see someone who's in the same spot as you practically, kind of living out what maybe you would want to do or getting to talk to people that you would want to talk to. And I think that it's something you have to admire for someone like myself to pretty much be, I'm almost like a lone wolf in a way. I don't have the maybe accolades or the notoriety or connections of being on TV or having history on TV. I don't have a co-host. Like I'm just a lone rider here, kind of working his way in, like just doing his thing. And I think that I'm very friendly and engaging with my guests. I think that I promote the good fight. And what I mean by the good fight is I talk a lot about mental health and bringing up people instead of bringing them down, because oftentimes in today's day and age, we see people consumed by hate and are drained from maybe social media or whatever it may be. And I think that a lot of times now, we just got to start being nice to each other, especially during these times. We don't know what somebody's going through. And a simple pleasantry, if it's nice, could go a long way to making someone's day better. And I think that that's a message I like to spread on my podcast a lot. And I like to tell kids maybe around the world or anybody watching that they could do anything that they set their mind to. We all have hard days. I've had plenty of them, but you just got to keep moving along. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You will find your way, and anything that you want to accomplish in life is completely in your hands. As long as you keep your mind set on doing it, you could accomplish anything. And I think that that's the message here in all of this.
Awesome, Mike. Now, where can they connect with you on social media, and where can they download your episodes?
So you could follow me on Instagram at Mike Lewis Official. I'm also on Twitter where I do most of my promotion and talking. My username is MikeLew52. And my YouTube, where most of my videos and podcasts are put out, is Mike Lewis Podcast. But I'm also on Spotify and Apple as well, if you want to download that. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
Awesome. Now for my self-promotion. Alrighty, guys. To download episodes of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, head to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Spreaker. Just type in the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Spreaker. You can listen to my episodes with some of the Challenge alumni, including Bailey and Swaggy, Paulie, Joss, and so much more. You can also subscribe to my social media channels at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. And more importantly, visit jakestake.com for my articles, interviews, and reviews on with Challenge, Big Brother, Masked Singer, America's Got Talent, and some Survivor people. It's been a big year this year. I've welcomed a lot of winners from AGT, such as the current reigning champ of America's Got Talent, spoken word artist Brandon Leake, Big Brother legend Rachel Riley, Survivor winners Adam Klein and Ethan Zahn, plus the Quester winner Kim Bettina. So it's been a huge year for Jake's Take. So please make sure you check this out. Mike, you have been a phenomenal guest. I am so grateful that you came on my podcast. You have a big and bright future ahead of yourself.
Thank you for the invite. This is always good because this is the first time I'm doing something like this. It's really cool to be on the opposite side of the spectrum here. And I think that anybody watching this or listening to this to go ahead and chase your dreams, whatever it may be. If you're looking to play the piano, if you're looking to cook, whatever, if you're looking to become better at anything you're doing, just please promise yourself, make a promise to yourself that you will do anything you can to get better at that and improve yourself because nobody is stopping you. Don't listen to any negativity. The world is yours.
Alrighty, guys. And on that note, thank you so much for watching or listening, and we will see you later and have a fantastic day, everybody. Adios and bye-bye.